Good morning, everybody. This is Sunday in the House, 30 minutes of red letter revival and political resistance. Thank you for joining me today, this morning, on Sunday morning, or whenever during the week you are watching and listening to this broadcast. I'm Dwight Moody, coming to you from our makeshift studio in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. All around us this morning, there are storm clouds. They're sweeping through South Carolina even as I speak, generally to the south and east of us. But they've come all the way through the southeast, Kentucky and Oklahoma, Tennessee, Mississippi. The last I heard, there were 28 deaths and maybe more. This is just the latest in a long string of traumatic things in our country. Think about this. 6 months ago, Hurricane Helene swept through this part of the country and did all sorts of damage just to the north of us in North Carolina and through the mountains. I talked about that last week. In January, the LA fires stunned all of us. We could not believe what we were watching, and the people who have been traumatized because of that. Think about the chaos that has overtaken the federal government and many, many people, thousands of people around the country ever since the inauguration of Donald Trump. There has been what I would call an orgy of destruction as the president and his crew have sought to blow up the federal government. They are acting in a spirit of revenge and without dignity, without concern for people. People are being fired, tens of thousands of people without cause. The stock market now is declining. Many people are now predicting a 40 to 50% chance of a significant recession just this year. All of this is unsettling and it's dangerous. You may sense this in your own spirit, even as I do. And you may see around you and on the screen and here today a rising tide of resistance to the political chaos. I am part of that resistance. I want you to think about what has just happened just this week. The arrest without cause and without legal justification of people who are traveling and living in our country with green card permission. The president not only has done that, but they are canceling all refugee and immigrant processes so that we're not even going to open the doors. Lady Liberty might as well put her lamp down and go into hiding. They are blowing up Voice of America, which is the radio voice of America all over the world. They're canceling millions of dollars of research grants into all kinds of medical situations, including cancer. And of course, they have unleashed the largest resurgence of white supremacy that our country has seen since the early 1950s, canceling all this DEI. They are posturing as if this is anti-racism, but we all know, and they know, what the truth is, that this is white supremacy racism intended to disregard and disadvantage anybody that is not white, Christian, and primarily male in our country. This has generated, as you know, as I know, as I feel, as you feel, a great deal of angst and uncertainty in our country. We don't know what to make of it. I read a long article this morning by Ralph Nader talking about why all the leaders of our country, including former presidents, have been quiet. They have not raised their voice to protest and join the resistance. Well, I want you to know that every Sunday morning or whenever you watch this, this is 30 minutes of resistance to this political climate of fear and intimidation and destruction. But here's some things that I am trying to do to keep my sanity and keep calm, and I want to read them off to you. Maybe you have your own list. Maybe you want to add some things to this list. First of all, we all need to exercise and stay active and not hole up in our houses, our dorm rooms, our apartments. Now, I try to get out every day and walk. I didn't yesterday because of the weather. No, I did. 4 miles yesterday on the Swamp Rabbit Trail. I'll try to do that. But you need to stay active. Get out. Exercise your bones. Second, pay your bills. Stay out of debt. Quit spending money. Not only because the economy is so uncertain, but because this is a way to push back against especially Amazon, Walmart, Target, places like that are helping to fund the Trumpian chaos in the world. Number 3, play music. Play it loud. Turn the sound up. Let it overwhelm your spirit. Let it feed your spirit. Number 4, connect with your family and friends. Whatever community you have. If you have a church community, fine. If you've got a neighborhood community, a sports community, a book club, a travel club, whatever group of people that you congregate with on a regular basis, stay in touch. Be intentional about it. Are you in love? Seek romance. Find somebody to love. Make love. It's good for your soul. It's good for your spirit. Laugh as much as possible. I really think that making fun of Donald Trump is a great discipline. It's a great way for us to process our irritation and our anger. I have actually written a piece of ridicule, a song. You can find it on my website. We need to eat right, eat healthy. We need to pray and meditate, read poetry, write song lyrics. It's springtime. Get out and plant some flowers, plant some vegetables wherever you can. Put a little beauty in the world. These are things you can do and that I can do to manage ourselves in the middle of all of this chaos in the physical world as well as the political world and maybe even in your spiritual world. I was listening to a podcast yesterday that talked about the dramatic rise of mental health issues, a good bit of it among young people, ages 14 to 24, a good bit of it generated by social media. Now, I'll have to confess, I'm an addict to social media. I've got my phone right here. I'm on it more than I want to admit. And even here we are broadcasting on Facebook. Thank you for being on social media. Post this on your social media. Link it to one of your social media accounts. Help us spread the word about this 30 minutes of red letter religion and political resistance. Now, last week I talked a little bit about this question. Does the West, by which we mean North America and Europe primarily, and other liberal, democratic, capitalist countries, does the West need a religious revival? Does the West need a religious revival? I have reported, everybody's been writing about the decline of religious attachment, religious attendance, religious participation. And in some parts of Europe, 80% of young people claim no religion whatsoever. This has caused, as you know, a great crisis of faith, of psychological well-being, of moral angst. And one of the ways that people are talking about this now is whether we need a revival of religion. Now, America itself, there have been several periods of religious revival. The First Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening in the 19th century, and then in about the 1960s, some of us remember the Jesus movement that started out on the West Coast, in which people sought a fresh experience of at least the Christian religion. Well, I posed this question, do we need a religious revival? And I've gotten all kinds of responses. I wrote an article about it this week in my newsletter. If you do not get the newsletter each week, it is a free subscription. You can go to my website at themeetinghouse.net and subscribe. I send it out once a week. It generally has 1 or 2 articles, including book reviews. And one of the things I received this week from a listener out in Washington, you know, we have listeners in 20 to 25 states around the country, and we thank you for your attention to what we're doing, for your support of what we're doing. We need your support. We need you to share both the newsletter and this broadcast, and we need you to make a contribution. You know, I haven't gotten any contributions so far in the month of March. And today's the 16th, so that's almost 3 weeks. But from a viewer out in Washington, the state of Washington, eastern Washington, a woman by the name of Amy Hawk, whom I met on TikTok. She has a very active Christian witnessing and teaching podcast through TikTok. I've watched it many times. Amy Hawk. She's written this book called The Judas Effect: How Evangelicals Betrayed Jesus for Power. I'm going to read it this week and review it in the newsletter. May talk about it a little bit next week on the program. I received a number of responses from all over the country, best articulated by a person from Birmingham, Alabama, who said, no, we don't need a revival of religion. We need a revival of following Jesus. I got a lot of responses like this. We need a revival of what we call compassion and courage, or kindness, of justice. We need that more than we need a revival of religious services. One person from Missouri wrote and said, we need a revival of love and peace and ethics. Another person from Georgia wrote and said, we don't need any more religion, we need grace and love. I think a lot of us feel this way. Whether this spirit of love and acceptance and forgiveness and friendship, whether that's filtered through a church or not, we need these Jesus qualities in our culture, in our community, in our lives. And then from a viewer in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina, I got this message. They said, Dwight, are you familiar with the podcast called The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God? A podcast, The Surprising Rebirth of Belief in God. And no, I was not familiar with it. I sat down and watched these podcasts. I think there are 8 in the first series. They are an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes long. Very, very well done. It's basically British, and it's talking about what they see as a renaissance in the intellectual world. Not so much church-going and not so much Bible study, but whether there's a new openness among the intelligentsia in the English-speaking world. Some of you remember that 25, 30, 40 years ago, there were a quartet of scholars who wrote books about atheism. They were all atheists. Richard Dawkins was one. Sam Harris was another. They went all over the world ridiculing religion and talking about how they were atheists and why atheism was the only intelligent way to understand and interpret the world. Well, this podcast, and I've listened to 3 or 4 of these podcasts this week, introducing me to things that I didn't know about. But it raises the question now, instead of do we need a revival, is there a revival already underway? Now, I want to give you some possible answers to that question. Is there religious revival already underway? These are some trends, maybe trending, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you make your own judgment. Maybe you should look around for evidence in your own part of the world and say, yeah, I see some evidence of that. First of all, are there youth movements in which young people are rejecting the cynicism and the secularism of our world and opting for a vigorous religious experience? I think about the huge Passion conferences down in Atlanta, January of every year, 50, 60, 70,000 teenagers who come together. I think about the Asbury University revival that I attended 2 years ago in Kentucky, which is my home state. I did some broadcasting about that. It lasted for 2 months. I think about, occasionally I see videos of great campus events like the one at Ohio State University, that was led by players on the football team, the Ohio State football team, one of the top teams in the country. Their football players baptized thousands of college students at Ohio State. Maybe these are signs of revival, I don't know. And then this podcast raises the question of whether there's a renaissance among the intellectual elite. This podcast is hosted by a man by the name of Justin Brierley. He's a British man. But in reading of it, he interviewed a number of intellectuals who had been converted. He talked about the book Dominion. Some of you may be familiar with this book by a man named Tom Holland. Now, I had to look up Tom Holland. There are two Tom Hollands in Great Britain. One of them is a young actor who has played Spider-Man. Yes, I haven't seen any of those. Spider-Man. Every one of those 6 movies has grossed more than $1 billion. And the young man is very, very popular. But there's another Tom Holland who's a historian and a scholar. And he's written a book called Dominion. And he describes how Christianity has shaped modern Western culture, including things like democracy and freedom and civil rights and even capitalism. And that this has helped change the atmosphere and the culture among many of the celebrities, including a man by the name of Jordan Peterson. Some of you recognize that name. He is a very prominent Canadian psychologist who tends to the conservative side of cultural issues. There's a great mystery, I think, about whether he is a religious person. He wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life, which has been very, very popular. I have the book. I haven't read it. Maybe I should read it. Maybe too late for me. About to celebrate my 75th birthday, but it may not be too late for you, but it's a big, thick, heavy book. It's not a small book like this one. It's a big book. It'll take you time to wade through. But the question is, do these things portend a renaissance? There was a conference called the ARC conference. I watched a couple of weeks ago. One of the speakers, David Brooks, who writes for the New York Times. He also is on the conservative end of the intellectual and cultural spectrum, but he has since become a Christian in the last few years. Now, there are people who would say, yes, and the surest sign of religious renewal is the MAGA movement that has swept Donald Trump into power. The majority of Catholic Christians in the United States, 80% of evangelical Christians in the United States are part of this movement. They see Donald Trump as the great savior of America. They like everything he's doing. No, I'm part of the resistance. But many, many, especially white Christians in America, love what he's doing. And they think it's a sign from God. Led by Franklin Graham and other people. Some people look at the megachurch movement. The majority of Christians in America attend megachurches. Now, this is Sunday morning. People are going to be in church all over the country. The majority of people who go to church on a day like today attend a mega church. That is, an attendance of at least 2,000 people or more. That's true here in South Carolina. We've got a whole string of big mega churches. But the question is, I don't know whether there's a religious revival going on. I think we need a red letter revival. That's what I have been promoting. What do you mean by that, Dr. Moody? Well, here's what I mean. Instead of trying to focus on the whole Bible, it's a big book, hard to understand, full of 1,000 different interpretations. Let's open up to the New Testament and look at the red letters of Jesus. What did Jesus say? We need to be inspired by the life and teaching and words and deeds of Jesus. That's what we need. Not politics, not church activity. We need a red letter revival. We need a red letter Jesus, not a power Jesus, not a political Jesus, not a money Jesus. We need a red letter Jesus that is described by these two words, courage and compassion. Courage and compassion. We don't have enough of these things in the church or in our political scene today. We need the practices of Jesus, of prayer and meditation, of hospitality and welcome, of kindness and compassion, of courage in the face of the religious establishment and the political establishment. You know, it was both of these that conspired against Jesus. You know, his very first sermon, he went home to his hometown, stood up and read the prophet Isaiah and said, I'm here to declare the year of the Lord's favor, good news to the poor, release to the captive, and healing for the sick, the favorable day of the Lord. It is fulfilled now, in this day. And of course, they ran him out of town, the religious establishment, at the beginning of his ministry, at the end of his ministry. The religious leaders conspired with the political leaders, that is Rome, and crucified Jesus. This is a damning assessment of where the political and religious establishment often are, to kill the prophets and those that are sent by God. Now, you know, I want to focus just a little bit upon one of the big sermons of Jesus. You know, in the book of Matthew, there are two long sermons of Jesus. One is what we call the Sermon on the Mount. It begins with the Beatitudes, the blessings. That's what we ought to put up on walls in our schools. Not the Ten Commandments, we need the Beatitudes. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the poor in spirit. This is what we need. In that Sermon on the Mount, includes the prayer of Jesus, what we call the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. The most important words that Jesus ever spoke. And I'll say again what I've been saying every week. You want to be a Christian? Pray this prayer. You want to be a Christian? Live this prayer. You want to be a Christian? Believe this prayer. Now, I can unpack that. Sometimes I think I want to write a book on that. At the end of Matthew's gospel, there is another sermon, chapters 24 and 25. And in this, there is the promise about what's to come. It begins with Jesus warning that hard times are coming. Now, a lot of people think that Jesus was talking about the end of the world. No, he talks about the end of the age, the end of this period, the end of the process that we are in. And he warned people then and people now that hard times are coming. And we must be ready for it. And then he ends up this sermon with the most famous parable that he told. It's known as the parable of the sheep and goats, where he gathers everybody before the throne of judgment. And it says, blessed are you and cursed are you. Why are we blessed? Well, because you fed the hungry, gave water to the thirsty, you welcomed the stranger, you visited the person in prison, you healed the sick, you gave comfort. And the people said, well, when did we ever do that? Jesus said, anytime you do it to the least person you meet, you're doing it to Jesus. This is the culmination of this second long sermon. These are the teachings of Jesus. Here again, Jesus was not so concerned about what's going to happen after we die or in the afterlife or in heaven or hell. Jesus is teaching us how to live now. This is the red letter revival we need. How to live now to feed the people that are hungry all around us. Now, our political leaders are cutting off all kinds of help like that. We're going to have to pick up the ministry. Your church is going to have to pick up the ministry. Your community, your family, your kitchen. Jesus said, give a cup of cold water to people who are thirsty. Heal those who are sick. While our politicians are cutting off that kind of research and help, we're going to have to pick it up. Welcome strangers, especially immigrants, especially refugees, especially people that look different than you, look different than me. I'm an old white man, but all around us are young brown people. They may be Christians, they may be unbelievers, they may be Muslims or Hindus. We are to receive them as if they are Jesus. Treat every person you meet as if they are the presence of Jesus Christ. That's what he was talking about. That's what a red letter revival is. That's what our nation needs. Instead of rounding up brown people and putting them on planes and sending them to some place they've never been, we need to invite them into our communities, our churches, our homes, our schools, our neighborhoods, our places of business. This is red letter religion. You can read more about this on my website, themeetinghouse.net. Be a part of what we're trying to do here. Share this broadcast. Go to themeetinghouse.net. Send a message to me. Post on this Facebook. Make a comment. Share it to your Facebook page. Make a contribution. You can go to themeetinghouse.net/support. I'm trying to get 75 donors before my 75th birthday, which is the 30th of March, which is a Sunday. The night before, I'm having a big party. You might want to come. Celebrating 75 years, I'm trying to raise up 75 donors. You can be one of those donors. Send a little bit, send a lot. God bless you today. I hope you can avoid the storms, find a way to help somebody who's been impacted by all of this. Be Jesus to the people around you. Red letter religion, that's what we need in the world today. That's what you need. That's what I need. God bless you. I will see you next Sunday, 9 o'clock a.m., Sunday in the house. God bless you. Write me. Let me hear from you. You have a great day.